I should have seen it coming the moment Denise called us both into the conference room that Tuesday morning, but I was too busy thinking about which restaurant I'd choose for my celebration dinner. "You're announcing him." The words tore out of my throat before my brain could stop them, sharp and ugly in the suddenly silent room. Everyone turned to stare at me, while Nolan Pierce stood there at the front, that easy smile plastered across his face like he'd just won the lottery. Which I guess in a way he had, because he'd just stolen my lottery ticket. Denise cleared her throat and kept going like I hadn't just humiliated myself. "Our new senior strategy director will be leading the Hartman account transition," she announced, and the applause started building around me while I sat there frozen. My hands gripping the edge of the conference table, so hard my knuckles went white. This was my promotion, the one I'd worked 60-hour weeks for, the one I'd sacrificed my sister's wedding planning help for. The one I'd earned by training Nolan himself just 6 months ago, when he stumbled into our department like a lost puppy who couldn't tell a market analysis from a grocery list. My name is Alara Vance. I'm 34 years old. And I've always had this thing about control that my ex-boyfriend used to call my death grip on reality. I color-code my calendar in 7 different shades. I proofread emails at least 3 times before sending them. I keep spreadsheets tracking everything from my monthly expenses to which friends I need to check in with and when. And honestly, I know it's excessive, but it's also why I'm good at what I do. The problem is, when I decide something belongs to me, I hold on to that belief like it's a life raft in the middle of the ocean. And maybe that's not always healthy, but it's kept me from drowning more times than I can count. My obsession with fairness and order has got me this far in my career at Morrison & Klein Consulting. But it's also cost me relationships and sleep, and probably a few years off my life from the stress I put myself under. But this promotion was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be the thing that made all those sacrifices worth it, the validation that my methods worked, that my control paid off. Nolan caught my eye across the room after the meeting ended, and for just a second his smile faltered, this tiny flicker of something that might have been guilt or might have been satisfaction. I couldn't tell which. He's 37, one of those guys who radiates charm like it's a cologne he puts on every morning. Always remembering birthdays and bringing in donuts and laughing too loud at everyone's mediocre jokes. People love him because he makes everything seem easy, like work is just this fun adventure we're all on together, instead of the cutthroat competition it actually is. I pushed through the crowd of people congratulating him and went straight to Denise's office, not even bothering to knock. "You told me I was the frontrunner," I said, and I could hear my voice shaking, but I couldn't control it. "You said the promotion was practically mine." Denise looked up from her computer with this tired expression that made me want to throw something. "Sit down, Alara." But I didn't sit down. I stood there in her doorway with my arms crossed while she sighed and closed her laptop. Leadership decided they needed someone more adaptable for the role. Nolan showed initiative on the Brennan project last month, and the clients specifically requested him for future work. Initiative? The word came out like I was spitting poison. I created the entire framework he used on that project. I handed it to him on a silver platter. "That's not how leadership saw it," Denise said, and her tone had that final quality that meant the conversation was over, but I couldn't let it go. "I'm sorry, Alara, I really am, but the decision's been made. Now I need you to be professional about this and support Nolan in his new role." I left her office before I said something I'd regret. Walked straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall where I could finally let the tears come. My chest felt like someone had reached in and squeezed all the air out of my lungs, and I kept seeing Nolan's face during that announcement. The way he'd looked so comfortable up there, like he'd always belonged in that position. That night I couldn't sleep, just lay in my apartment staring at the ceiling and running through every interaction I'd had with Denise over the past 3 months, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up and opened my laptop, started scrolling through LinkedIn because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. I pulled up Nolan's profile and started reading through his work history, and that's when I noticed something weird. There was a gap in his timeline, this 6-month period where he listed himself as independent consultant, but with no details, and the dates overlapped with his first months at Morrison and Klein. I clicked through to his connections, started digging deeper because my obsessive nature wouldn't let me stop once I'd found something that didn't add up. That's when I found the website for Mercer Strategic Solutions, this small consulting firm that specialized in market entry strategies, and listed as co-founder was Noah P. Mercer. The headshot made my stomach drop straight through the floor because it was him. It was absolutely Nolan, just with darker hair and glasses, but the same smile. The same guy who'd just stolen my promotion. My hands started shaking as I clicked through the site, saw the services they offered, the client testimonials, the proprietary frameworks they advertised. I recognized those frameworks because I'd helped develop them at Morrison and Klein. They were our competitive advantage, and here was Nolan selling them under a different name through his own company. He wasn't just my coworker, he was running a competing firm while having access to all our client accounts, all our strategies, everything we'd built. And Denise had just promoted him to Senior Strategy Director, given him even more access, more power, more opportunity to steal from us. I didn't sleep at all that night, just kept digging and screenshotting and documenting everything I could find. By morning, I had a folder full of evidence, cross-references between our company's proposals and the work samples on his website, identical language patterns, the same slide structures I'd created. Even specific data points that could only have come from our internal databases. My mind was racing with possibilities and plans, the anger burning in my chest, so hot I could barely breathe. But I didn't confront him, didn't tell anyone yet, because my obsessive nature knew that rushing in without a complete case would just make me look bitter about the promotion. I needed to be thorough, needed to be certain, needed to build something so airtight that no one could dismiss it as sour grapes. The next 3 weeks were hell in a way I'd never experienced before. I started coming in early and staying late, not to work on my actual projects, but to build my case against Nolan. I'd wait until everyone left the office, and then I'd access the archived proposal files, comparing our work to what appeared on the Mercer Strategic Solutions website. Every match I found felt like vindication and fuel for the fire burning inside me. I stopped responding to my friends' texts, canceled dinner plans with my sister, let my apartment turn into a disaster zone, because all I could focus on was proving what Nolan had done. My coworker Lydia asked me if I was okay one morning when I showed up with coffee stains on my shirt, because I'd been so distracted I'd walked into a door. "You look exhausted," she said, her voice full of concern that I didn't want. "Are you still upset about the promotion?" "I'm fine," I lied, because how could I explain that I wasn't upset about the promotion anymore? I was on a mission to expose corporate theft and betrayal. She wouldn't understand, nobody would understand until I showed them the evidence. But the paranoia was getting worse, I'll admit that now. I started seeing patterns everywhere, wondering if other people knew about Nolan's double life, if Denise was in on it somehow. If I was the only one who cared that our company was being gutted from the inside. I stopped sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nolan's face during that promotion announcement. That flicker of something in his expression that I still couldn't name. My obsession with control had turned into something darker, this need to not just expose him, but to completely destroy the facade he'd built. Nolan tried to talk to me a few times during those weeks, always with that easy charm like nothing had changed between us. "Hey Alara, still upset about the promotion?" he asked one day in the break room, pouring himself coffee while I microwaved leftover lunch I couldn't remember making. I forced myself to smile at him, this bright fake expression that felt like it might crack my face in half. "Of course not," I said, keeping my voice light and casual even though my pulse was hammering in my throat. "You earned it." Denise made the right choice. He studied me for a second like he was trying to figure out if I was being sincere, and I stared right back at him. This silent battle of wills happening over the coffee maker. "I'm glad you feel that way," he finally said. "I was worried there might be some tension between us. I'd really like your input on the Hartman account strategy. You know that market better than anyone." "Happy to help," I told him. And I meant it in a way he couldn't possibly understand, because helping him would give me more access to his methods, more evidence to add to my growing file. After he left, I stood there shaking, adrenaline coursing through my system like I'd just run a marathon. This was what I'd become, this person who could lie smoothly while planning someone's professional destruction, and some small part of me wondered if I was going too far. If my need for control and justice had twisted into something ugly. But then I'd remember that promotion announcement, remember all the late nights I'd worked while Nolan had been building his competing firm, and the doubt would burn away in the heat of my anger. By the fourth week, I had everything I needed, dozens of documents showing clear patterns of intellectual property theft. Business registration, records proving he'd started Mercer Strategic Solutions while employed at Morrison & Klein. Archived versions of both websites showing identical content uploaded at suspicious times. I'd even found email metadata suggesting he'd been sending our proposal templates to his personal account. It was airtight, undeniable, the kind of evidence that would end his career not just at our company, but potentially in the entire industry. But I was still afraid, still second-guessing myself in those quiet moments at 3 a.m, when the obsession loosened its grip just enough for doubt to creep in. What if Denise didn't believe me? What if they thought I was just being vindictive? What if I was wrong about something and it made me look like a fool? The quarterly executive review was scheduled for Friday morning, one of those big presentations where department heads show off their team's accomplishments to the C-suite. Nolan would be presenting our strategy for the first time as senior director, taking credit for work that was at least partially mine. Standing up there, in front of everyone like he deserved to be there. Thursday night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by printouts and highlighted documents, my laptop open to the email draft I'd been composing and deleting for the past hour. The subject line just said, "Urgent, need to discuss before tomorrow's meeting," and it was addressed to Denise, but my finger kept hovering over the send button without pressing it. This was the point of no return. Once I sent this email, everything would change, and despite all my preparation and evidence and righteous anger, I was terrified. My obsession with control meant I'd planned for every possible outcome, but it also meant I could see all the ways this might go wrong. All the ways I might end up looking like the villain instead of the hero. I pressed send at 11:47 that night and then immediately wanted to unsend it, but it was too late. The message was out there in the digital void, and there was no taking it back. Denise replied within 10 minutes, which meant she was still awake too, probably reviewing presentation materials for tomorrow. "My office, 7:30 tomorrow morning before the review," her message said, and nothing else. No hint of what she was thinking, or whether she believed me or whether I'd just destroyed my own career along with Nolan's. I didn't sleep at all that night, just kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd present the evidence, what I'd do if she dismissed me or accused me of retaliation. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my stomach felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. But underneath all the fear was this bright, burning certainty that I was doing the right thing. That justice was about to be served. I got to the office at 7:15 and waited outside Denise's door, my laptop bag heavy with the physical copies of everything I'd found. Backup evidence in case the digital files somehow disappeared. She arrived at 7:25 looking tired, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes that matched my own. "Come in," she said without greeting me, and I followed her into the office with my heart beating so hard I thought she might be able to hear it. She closed the door and sat down behind her desk, folding her hands in that way that meant She was preparing to be patient but firm. "Alara, this better not be about the promotion again." "It's not," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. I set my laptop on her desk and turned it to face her, pulled up the folder I'd labeled Conflict of Interest, Confidential, with all my evidence organized into categories. "It's about Nolan Pierce." Or should I say Noah Mercer? Her expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders tense slightly. "Explain." So I did, walking her through everything I'd found over the past month, showing her the side-by-side comparisons of our proposals and his company's work samples. The business registration documents, the archived web pages, the metadata from those suspicious emails. I talked for 20 minutes straight, my voice only trembling once when I got to the part about our proprietary frameworks being sold through his website. I showed her client lists that overlapped, pricing structures that were suspiciously similar. Even testimonials on his site that referenced projects I knew for a fact had been completed at Morrison & Klein. Denise's face got harder with each piece of evidence, her jaw tightening in a way that would have been satisfying if I wasn't so terrified of what came next. "Stay here," she said when I finished, standing up so abruptly her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. She grabbed her phone and walked out without another word, leaving me alone in her office with my laptop still open to the damning evidence. I could hear raised voices in the hallway but couldn't make out the words, and then footsteps, multiple people moving quickly, and then silence. 10 minutes passed, then 20, and I started wondering if I should leave or stay, or if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my professional life. My obsessive need for control was screaming at me to do something, to take action, to not just sit here passively waiting. But there was nothing to do except wait and hope I'd built a strong enough case. Denise came back after 30 minutes with Samir from IT, our department's analyst who handled all the technical security stuff. "Walk Samir through the email metadata," she told me, and I did, showing him the timestamps and server routes and all the technical details I'd documented. He took my laptop and started running his own searches, pulling up logs and access records I didn't even know existed, and with each new screen his expression got more serious. "She's right," he finally said to Denise. These files were accessed from his workstation and forwarded to an external email address registered to Mercer Strategic Solutions. "Multiple instances over the past 8 months. I need you in the boardroom," Denise said to me. And the way she said it made my stomach drop, because I couldn't tell if I was about to be thanked or fired. We walked down the hallway to where the executive review was supposed to start in 15 minutes, found Nolan already there setting up his presentation. Looking confident and relaxed in his expensive suit. He saw me walk in with Denise and Samir, and his smile faltered just like it had during the promotion announcement, that tiny flicker of something that I now recognized as fear. "Denise, what's going on?" he asked, glancing between the three of us. "The review starts soon and I need to finish setting up." "We need to talk, Nolan," Denise said, her voice flat and professional. "Or should I call you Noah?" The color drained from his face, so fast I thought he might actually pass out. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Denise snapped, and I'd never heard that tone from her before, sharp enough to cut. "Are you operating another consulting firm while employed here?" The silence stretched out for what felt like hours, Nolan standing there frozen with his hand still on his laptop keyboard. The presentation screen behind him, showing our company logo, like a mockery of everything he'd been stealing. "It's not what you think," he finally said, but his voice had lost all that easy charm, turned desperate and thin. "Then explain it to me," Denise said. "Explain how your company's website has our proprietary frameworks. Explain how client proposals we developed are showing up as samples of your work. Explain the emails you've been forwarding to yourself. Those frameworks aren't proprietary, they're industry standard," he tried, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Lots of firms use similar approaches. Not with identical wording and our specific data models," Samir interjected, pulling up something on his tablet. "I've got access logs, showing you downloaded confidential client files and proposal templates going back 8 months. That's not industry standard, that's theft. Nolan's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw real hatred there, raw and undisguised. This is retaliation, he said, his voice rising. She's been after me since I got the promotion. This is just her trying to get revenge because she couldn't handle losing. Actually, it's disclosure, I said, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. How steady my voice was despite my heart hammering against my ribs. It's me doing what I should have done the moment I found your website. It's me protecting this company from someone who's been stealing from us while pretending to be our colleague. You had no right to go through my files, he shot back. You accessed archived proposals without authorization. You violated our data privacy policies. You stalked me online like some kind of obsessed psycho. I had every right to investigate suspicious activity, I said, my voice getting harder. And everything I found was either publicly available or accessed through normal company systems. Unlike you, I didn't forward confidential information to personal email accounts. Enough, Denise cut in, holding up her hand. Nolan, you're suspended effective immediately pending a formal investigation. You need to surrender your laptop and building access card right now. HR will contact you about next steps. You're suspending me based on her accusations. Nolan's voice cracked on the last word. She's the one who violated protocols. She's the one who's been acting unstable for weeks. Everyone's noticed it. Ask Lydia, ask anyone. This is character assassination, and you're falling for it. I'm suspending you based on evidence from IT showing unauthorized access and transfer of confidential files, Denise corrected him. Whether that constitutes criminal activity will be determined by legal counsel, but regardless, you violated your employment contract and betrayed this company's trust. Now give me your laptop. The confrontation lasted another 10 minutes, Nolan alternating between defensive explanations and angry accusations. But eventually, he handed over his equipment and walked out of the boardroom with his face flushed red and his hands shaking. I stood there watching him go and felt this strange, hollow sensation in my chest, not quite satisfaction, not quite guilt, something in between that I couldn't name. Denise turned to me once he was gone, and her expression was complicated. Layers of appreciation and concern, and something that might have been disappointment. You were right to bring this to my attention, she said carefully, but I need to be clear that your methods concern me. The number of archived files you accessed, the after-hours logins, the way you conducted this investigation without informing anyone. It flagged unusual activity from your account. I was building a case, I said, but even to my own ears it sounded defensive. I needed to be thorough before making accusations. You needed to come to me the moment you suspected something, Denise corrected. What you did instead looks like surveillance, like you were waiting for him to make a mistake so you could take him down. I'm grateful you uncovered this situation, but I'm also concerned about your judgment and your ability to work collaboratively. The executive review was postponed while the investigation began. And over the next 3 weeks, I watched my vindication turn complicated. Legal got involved, corporate security, even the police, because intellectual property theft can be criminal depending on how it's prosecuted. Nolan initially tried to claim his company had been inactive, just a side project he'd never actually pursued, but the evidence was overwhelming. Client testimonials dated to months ago, active contracts, revenue streams that proved he'd been operating a competing business the entire time he'd worked at Morrison & Klein. He resigned quietly rather than face termination and potential legal action, his reputation in the industry destroyed, his LinkedIn profile deleted, his professional life imploding in real time. But the fallout touched me too in ways I hadn't anticipated. Some colleagues started treating me differently, like I was someone to be wary of, someone who might be documenting their mistakes too. Lydia stopped inviting me to lunch, started spreading quiet speculation that I'd been obsessed with taking Nolan down ever since the promotion. Its audit of my access patterns revealed I'd been working late nights for weeks, searching through old files, cross-referencing documents in ways that technically didn't violate policy, but definitely raised questions about my mental state. My obsessive need for control and justice had revealed itself to everyone in the department, and not everyone saw it as a virtue. 4 weeks after Nolan's resignation, Denise called me into her office again. I'd been expecting this conversation, had prepared for it the same way I'd prepared for everything else, but I was still nervous as I sat down across from her. "The investigation is complete," she said. Nolan admitted to operating Mercer Strategic Solutions while employed here, admitted to using our frameworks and client intelligence, admitted to forwarding confidential materials. He's agreed to a settlement that includes financial restitution and a non-compete agreement. The matter is resolved. "Good," I said, but the word felt flat. "The senior strategy director position is being reopened," Denise continued, and for a second my heart leaped because maybe this was it, maybe I was finally getting what I'd earned. But then I saw her expression and knew what was coming. "We'll be conducting a new search, considering both internal and external candidates. I want to encourage you to apply again, but not promote me directly," I said. "Not at this time," she confirmed. "Ilara, you did the right thing in bringing Nolan's misconduct to light. But the way you did it, the obsessiveness of it, the inability to trust your colleagues or management enough to involve us earlier, those things concern leadership. We need someone in that role who can build collaborative relationships, not someone who treats every situation like an investigation." I left her office feeling neither victorious nor defeated. Just exhausted, in a way that went bone deep. I'd exposed the truth, I'd protected the company, I'd proven that Nolan was a thief and a liar, but I'd also revealed my own flaws to everyone in the process. My need for control had driven me to build an airtight case, but it had also isolated me from my colleagues and made me look unstable. Justice had been served, but at a cost I was still calculating. That evening, I walked home through the city streets as the sun set, my mind replaying the past month over and over, analyzing every decision and wondering what I could have done differently. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I pulled it out absently, expecting a work email or maybe a text from my sister asking why I'd been avoiding her calls. Instead, it was a LinkedIn alert, something I'd set up months ago to track new consulting firms in our market space. A new company had just been registered, the notification said, and would I like to review the profile? The founder's name made me stop walking right there on the sidewalk, people flowing around me annoyed. Ilara Vance Consulting, specializing in strategic market analysis and competitive intelligence. There was a website link, a professional description, even a list of services offered. I hadn't registered this company, hadn't created a website, had no idea how my name was attached to this business entity that claimed to be operating in our industry. My hands started shaking as I clicked through the pages, seeing familiar frameworks and methodologies, seeing language that sounded like me but wasn't quite right. Seeing a professional photo I didn't remember taking. And at the bottom of the homepage, in the comments section that most corporate websites don't even have, was a single message posted minutes ago. "Careful what you dig up, Ilara. Sometimes you bury yourself. Looking forward to competing with Morrison and Klein. Best regards, a concerned colleague." It wasn't signed, but I knew who'd written it, could hear Nolan's voice in every word. Could see his revenge taking shape in this elaborate frame job that made me look like I'd been planning to leave the company all along. Like maybe my investigation had been motivated by wanting to eliminate competition before launching my own firm. I tried to access the website's backend to take it down, but the credentials weren't mine. The hosting information led to dead ends. The business registration listed an address I'd never heard of. Someone had created an entire fake company in my name, complete enough to look legitimate, public enough that anyone searching for me would find it. Positioned perfectly to destroy my credibility the same way I'd destroyed Nolan's. My phone buzzed again with emails from colleagues asking if this was real, if I was leaving Morrison and Klein, why hadn't I told anyone? Then one from Denise. My office first thing Monday morning. We need to talk about this. I stood there on the sidewalk with my phone clutched in my hand, the city moving around me, the sunset turning the buildings golden. And I felt the full weight of what I'd started crashing down. The war between Nolan and me hadn't ended with his resignation. It had only evolved into something more sophisticated, more dangerous, more personal. He'd learned from my methods, seen how I'd built my case against him, and now he was turning those same obsessive techniques back on me. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered against him had taught him exactly how to frame me. Every late night I'd spent documenting his theft had shown him how to manufacture documentation against me. My reflection stared back at me from a shop window, this tired woman with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her coat. Someone who'd let her need for control consume her until she couldn't tell the difference between justice and revenge anymore. I'd exposed Nolan's secret double life, but in the process I'd revealed my own capacity for obsession, my willingness to cross ethical lines when I believed I was right. My inability to trust anyone enough to ask for help before diving into the deep end alone. My flaws had caught up with me in exactly the way Denise had warned they would, and now I was facing consequences I hadn't planned for, hadn't controlled. Couldn't fix with spreadsheets and evidence files. The worst part was knowing Nolan was out there somewhere, probably smiling that easy smile, probably planning his next move, while I scrambled to defend myself against accusations I couldn't disprove. He'd learned from me that the best revenge isn't quick or loud. It's methodical and patient and documented. It's giving someone just enough rope to hang themselves while you watch from a safe distance. And I'd been such a good teacher, showing him exactly how to destroy someone's professional reputation with nothing but publicly available information and carefully constructed implications. Monday morning, I'd walk into Denise's office and try to explain this fake company that bore my name, try to prove I hadn't been planning to steal clients all along. Try to salvage what remained of my credibility. But somewhere deep down, I knew the truth that was harder to admit. Nolan hadn't just gotten revenge on me, he'd shown me what I'd become in my pursuit of justice. And that reflection was uglier than I wanted to acknowledge. The real revenge wasn't the fake company or the implications, or even the potential end of my career at Morrison and Klein. The real revenge was forcing me to see myself clearly for the first time in months. To recognize that my obsessive need for control and fairness had twisted into something that hurt me as much as it hurt anyone else. Justice had been served, the bad guy had been exposed and punished, but victory tasted like ashes, and the cost kept climbing higher than I'd ever imagined possible.